There are only 5 active franchises in the history of Major League Baseball without a World Series trophy. One of them is the Milwaukee Brewers, and after what just happened, I can totally see why. Nothing has ever made more sense in my entire life. Another thought I had after witnessing what just happened was that this franchise will never get a World Series trophy. I'm pretty convinced I'm going to see Bigfoot before I ever see a Brewers championship because, oh my god. And no, I'm not even trying to mention the Mets thing, but since it works, okay, well, yeah, OMG. Everyone in Milwaukee is either really sad right now, really angry right now, a little bit of both, but either way, I gotta think there's a helpless feeling too. At least that's the way I see it for how this year just ended to cap off the last 6 years that have capped off an entire 55-year history of disappointment. But to truly see how heartbreaking this finish is, let's go back to how stupid I was. But before that, if you exist, like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet, or just wait to see if you enjoy the video and then make a decision. That works too. You know what doesn't work though? The Milwaukee frickin' Brewers. They seem like a toy that you just can't get to work. You gotta give them this though. At least recently, they've been very good at putting a consistent winning team on the field. They've been kind of like the Rays in this way. They're not afraid to make trades, even if it means sending a big or talented name away, because they're confident it's going to work. And usually in the end, it's ended up working. And most recently, when they traded away Corbin Burnes before the season, their ace, the 2021 Cy Young Award winner, one of the best starting pitchers in baseball, I thought it was dumb. And in the end, I ended up as the dumb one. They even lost their longtime manager to the absolute worst team he could have left for if you're the Brewers. But despite all this, the Brewers went on to not just make the playoffs again or win the division again, but they did it with ease. The next closest team to them was the one their previous manager left for, the Cubs, and they finished 10 games back along with the Cardinals. The Brewers just stayed the course, were consistent throughout. I mean, they never really slowed down. The Brewers had 1 month where they were under 500 this year, but every other month they played mostly good baseball, and not only were they consistent with the winning while the rest of their division was just crap, but they were consistent with how they won too. Like, nothing really changed from years past. They had one of the best pitching staffs in baseball, and an offense that wasn't necessarily great but enough. That's mostly really how the Brewers have been for years now, and that didn't change this year. Even with Corbin Burnes now gone, they continue to have a really good pitching staff, a top 5 one, and on top of all that, they were also baseball's feistiest team too. To begin the year, the Brewers basically got into a benches clearing altercation, and I gotta say altercation, not fight, because those things rarely actually turn into a full-on brawl, but it was like every other series they played, you look, and they had some beef going on between themselves and some other team. And I loved it. They weren't afraid to be like, screw you. They had an attitude that nobody was going to walk over them. And hey, as long as they won games, it worked. It was good. Why not? Play with some fire. And ironically, poetically, however you want to look at it, the 2024 Milwaukee Brewers started out their year beefing with the same team that they'd end their year beefing with, the New York Mets. And that first series all the way back in March was basically where this team was reborn in a sense. Like, the Mets basically helped start the Brewers winning in 2024 because in just those first games against the Mets, the Brewers made it clear that they were still here to win, that they meant business and now had an edge to them this time. And all the way to the end, that very same Mets team that kickstarted the 2024 Brewers success ended up as the same ones who ended that success. It's like if a mother gave birth to a kid and then killed it later on. Okay, that's a very dark and depressing analogy, but you get the point. And another thing, the Brewers actually dominated the Mets all year. That first series back in March, they swept it. And then 6 months later, the two linked up for the final series of the regular season, and the Brewers won 2 out of 3. They won the first 2 of that series, so they went 5-0 in their first 5 matchups with the Mets this year, and 5-1 overall in the regular season. But the Mets ended up winning when it mattered most, something they've continued to do, and it's been so magical. They needed to win that last game of the regular season in Milwaukee. If not, they would have missed the playoffs. So they win that game, then come back late in the first doubleheader game in Atlanta the next day. Twice, they came back, blew it, then Lindor hits a go-ahead 2-run homer with the Mets 2 outs away from losing, and 3 days later, an even crazier scenario happens. But let's start with game 1, and basically the biggest problem with the Brewers as a franchise that goes back years. The Brewers have made the postseason 10 times in their 55-year history, and in 7 of those 10 times, they've won a total of 0 rounds in the postseason. They made it and then said see ya, have a nice winter, everyone. The most recent example of this not happening was back in 2018, when the Brewers made the playoffs for the first time since 2011, shockingly beating out the Cubs for the division and then sweeping the Rockies in the first round before going the distance against the Dodgers in the NLCS, ending their season just a game away from going into the World Series for the first time since 1982, the only time they've ever been. The 2018 Brewers were fun. They had a lot of promise for the years to follow, and in some ways, that promise has definitely been delivered. The Brewers have gone on to make the postseason 5 out of the 6 years that have followed 2018. But the issue, they can't get past their first challenge. And another thing that sucks is in almost every one of these series, you can look and say the Brewers should have won or at the very least choked. They definitely choked in 2019, blowing a 2-run 8th inning lead despite having arguably the best reliever in baseball on the mound. Juan Soto said respectfully, "I don't care," and the Nationals sent the Brewers home. 2020 was 2020, who cares? Dodgers took care of business quickly with them. But in 2021, the Brewers had home field advantage, won the first game of the playoffs against the Braves at home, only to then lose 3 straight with Josh Hader giving up the losing run in the decisive game again. Then they missed in 2022, but did still win 86 games, so it's like, okay, alright, it's not like this team sucks now, and they proved that by finishing back on top of the division again in 2023. And I know the D-backs ended up sweeping them in the wildcard series, but they had a multiple run lead in both of those games. Like, both games basically started out the same way. The Brewers immediately jump out on top before the D-backs eventually have a big inning or two, and that's it. So, 2019, they had a lead late, a 2-run lead late. 2021, they had a series lead. 2023, they had multiple run leads in both games they lost. So there's a recurring theme here, and if you thought that trend would end in 2024, I think the best way I can explain the Brewers is like this. Other than 2018, a year that did feel pretty magical, even though the Brewers have been very successful in the years that have followed with making the postseason, being one of the most successful and consistently winning teams in all of baseball, they haven't had that magic feel to them. Again, 2018, Christian Yelich winning the MVP award in his first year as a Brewer, Josh Hader emerging as the best reliever in baseball. They steal the division away from the Cubs. I mean, there was a magical feel to that team in several ways. But none of these Brewers teams after have felt special. They've been good and talented, and that's great and all, but it seems like their vibe is just that they're good enough to make the playoffs, and then after that, they check out. Not that the players don't try, obviously. They really want to win, but none of these teams since 2019 have had that feel that they're about to go on some deep postseason run. It's like there's no personality to them other than being a solid team with a smart front office, and then that's it. They just quietly go away. So Game 1 starts out exactly how Game 1 last year did. They jump ahead early, here come the Brewers, only for the other team, now being the Mets, a soft rival, I guess you can call it, opening up a can of whoop ass with a ton of scoring of their own. And it's the first 2 runs the Mets got that continued this soft rivalry. Back in March, these two teams had some drama after Jeff McNeil thought Rhys Hoskins' slide into him to break up a double play was dirty. Hoskins was later thrown at. Skip ahead months, Winker, who was later traded to the Mets from the Nationals, has a history of not being liked, and would randomly get smoked in the ass with a 97-mile-an-hour fastball in the last series of the year in Milwaukee. Clearly on purpose, but with no context that we know of, other than he was a Brewer last year and maybe left a bad taste in his Brewers teammates' mouths like he reportedly did with his Mariners teammates' mouths the year before. And this theory was given more merit after Willy Adames, Winker's short-time former teammate, was so amped up over Winker talking trash as he rounded the bases on his triple that he started to go back and forth with Winker as he stood on third, and when Winker asked Adames what he was going to do, Adames told him to find out in the parking lot. The Mets go on to score 6 more runs and win this game 8-4. The bullpen locks it down to end things, and apparently after the game, Adames actually waited in the parking lot for Jesse Winker, who no-showed, which is pretty incredible, and the Brewers offense no-showed for most of Game 2 until the 8th inning. It really looked like the Mets were about to pull a deja vu for Milwaukee and replicate what Arizona did until 2 massive home runs in the 8th gave them the lead. Devin Williams comes in to get the Mets down 1-2-3 in the 9th, and a decisive Game 3 was now set. Man, Williams is so nasty. Big save for him. It'll be great if the Brewers can have him on the mound with the team up again in the 9th the next game. Oh my god. And that next game featured pitching, and more pitching through the first 6 innings until we got some hitting, and more hitting. The Brewers immediately ended the scoreless tie in the 7th by hitting back-to-back home runs on back-to-back pitches. The crowd's going absolutely wild, and you're thinking, alright, okay, here we go. Someone finally blinked. It was the Brewers. The Mets waited too long and blew their shot. And with the Brewers still up 2-0 a couple innings later, in comes Devin Williams again. And when I was watching this game, when Lindor strolled up to the plate to lead off the top of the ninth, something just hit me. I just all of a sudden got a feeling the Mets were going to come back and win this game. Lindor walks. I'm definitely feeling this now. The next hitter strikes out, and even down 0-2 in the count, Brandon Nimmo then impressively knocks a base hit. And right here, I'm as confident as ever the Mets were going to win this game. You combine the Mets' magic this year to how the Brewers franchise has really been since their birth, and even just by their recent history, and whether you believe me or not, I really did feel this way. And I kid you not, about 15 to 20 seconds before Pete Alonso decided to swing his bat, I tweeted out, the Mets are going to win this game. I just had that feeling. It's almost like the baseball gods got a hold of me in that moment and let me know what was up. Like, I literally have the baseball gods speaking to me when that ninth inning started. It was really weird. And lo and behold, the very next pitch gets smoked out to right over the wall. Mets all of a sudden have the lead. And to make matters even worse for the Brewers, Jesse Winker gets hit by a pitch, and what I felt was the second time in this same game that he made absolutely no effort to get out of the way from. Like, part of me even thought the umpire was going to call him back to the plate, but no, both times he gets to first. This time steals second and scores the fourth run off of Williams in this disastrous inning, slams his helmet down in front of Williams and screams. I mean, just the absolute worst scenario for the Brewers. This was just the cherry on top. I knew the Mets were winning this game the moment Pete Alonso walked up to the plate, even when Lindor was up and walked, but by the time Alonso was up, I was so sure something big was coming. The Brewers getting the leadoff guy in the ninth meant nothing to me, and as expected, a pretty quick strikeout and impressive double play by Lindor would end the game and put the Brewers to bed. For the second straight year, they go one and done at home in the wildcard round, and for the fifth time in the last 6 years, they go one and done, period. Where do the Brewers go from here? I don't know. I already learned my lesson on doubting them to be good in general, so I do think they'll be good moving forward per usual. At least they should be in the regular season, I think. But until further notice, I have absolutely no expectations that they will do anything come October. I'm not really a connected person at all to the state of Wisconsin and the people there, so I of course don't speak for any of them. But I don't think it's a crazy thing at all to say it has never been a worse time to be a Milwaukee Brewers fan. Beyond heartbreaking way to go out. Let me know your thoughts, and thank you for watching.